Hey everybody, today I'm going to save you time and money by demonstrating how to make these painter's pyramids out of scraps you probably have around the shop. Painter's pyramids are used to support a workpiece after it's been painted or finished in some way so that it can dry on both sides at the same time. Or you can just make pyramids. Either way, it's going to be fun, so stick around. My name is James and this is Homestyle Woodcrafts. I'm going to show you how to make these pyramids on a table saw, a compound miter saw, a band saw, a jig saw, and a scroll saw. So hopefully we'll figure out something that works for you in your shop. Let's start with a table saw. Remember to keep it safe. Understand and know how to use your tools properly and safely, and protect your eyes, your ears, your lungs, and your fingers. For the table saw, I am going to be using a length of 2x4, and there's no magic length. You'll just want to have enough so that when we do the cross-cutting part, there's enough length so that you can keep your fingers safely away from the blade. So the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the angle. I'm going to set it to 60 degrees. There's no magic to this. I'm not being super precise because I'm using them for painters' pyramids, and they don't need to be precise. If you need to be precise, then just carefully mark and measure everything to your own specifications. So now I'm setting up to make the rip cut of the 2x4, and my goal here is to make a real nice clean cut so that it cuts just at the top of the rounded corner of the 2x4. Take note of how I rotate the workpiece here because it sets it up properly for the next angled cut. Now that we have our triangular piece, we're ready to take the next step, which is cross-cutting it. We're going to leave the saw blade at the exact same angle. We're not going to do any changes to the saw blade whatsoever. When I first did this, something very interesting happened, especially if you're interested in the math and geometry of woodworking. So stay tuned. Real quick, let me walk you through how this all works. Okay, so here's your piece, your long triangle piece before you cut it. And then you set the workpiece on the right of the blade and you make this angled cut. And then you flip it around and you cut it on the left side. That left side cut makes the first geometric shape. Then you flip it around and cut it on the right side, and that makes the second geometric shape, and so forth. And as you flip it back and forth, you'll get a geometric shape each time. So here's how we're going to set it up on the table saw. So the flat side of what's going to end up being a pyramid is on the table, and this is the peaked side, which is up. And then we want to line it up to cut it as close to the corner as I can. You could cut it anywhere along here, it's just that this would end up being waste. So here's the interesting thing that I didn't realize would happen. And that is that first shape that you make when you cut it the first time on the left is not a pyramid. It's a tetrahedron. A tetrahedron is a four-sided geometric object, and each side is a triangle. Pyramid, on the other hand, has 5 sides. The top 4 sides are triangles, and then the bottom is a square. Anyway, I just kind of find that fascinating with the math and geometry of woodworking, that there's this alternating pattern of creating a tetrahedron and a pyramid. Now, here's the thing. It's a lot harder to say painter's tetrahedron than it is to say painter's pyramid. Now, here's another interesting thing. So just for me, when I'm cutting on the right side, there's a little more imprecise eyeballing than when I'm cutting on the left. So my tetrahedrons actually turn out to be much pointier than my pyramids. Of course, how pointy these painters' pyramids need to be is totally up to you, but the pointier the better as far as I'm concerned. So I really like these tetrahedrons, and the fact is they will work just as well as the pyramid. And now if you find that the point on your pyramid is not pointy enough, then just sand it down until the point is as pointy as you want it to be. Now I'm going to show you how to cut pyramids on a compound miter saw. And for this method, I'm going to be using a 2x2 instead of a 2x4. And instead of cross-cutting, I'm going to be cutting the end. And I've got a setup here to make that safe. But I would like to say that if you're ever setting up a cut with a saw and it just doesn't feel safe, don't do it. Listen to your instincts when it comes to safety. So let me show you how I set this up. Because I'm going to be cutting the end of this length of 2x2, I've set up a sacrificial fence and a square for stability so that when I lay it on the table of the saw, I can push it up against the square and the fence. And this will help keep it stable and safe. When I cut, I'll also be adding a clamp to clamp the 2x2 to the square. I've marked the center of the 2x2 to guide my cut for the point of the pyramid, and I have set the angle of the saw to 30 degrees because that's the angle I like, but you can vary from that based on your own preferences. And then one final cut to remove the pyramid from the length of 2x2. And there you have it. Pretty good. Nice and pointy tip. If I were going to be making a lot of these using this method, I would set up multiple 2x2 blanks to cut, and I'd cut them on each end so that I could batch out the process. Now I'm going to show you two ways to cut pyramids out on a bandsaw. For the first of these two methods, I'll be using my miter gauge. Like the other methods that I've demonstrated, I'm going to be cutting at a 30-degree angle, which is indicated on my miter gauge. And just to show you the difference between two different angles, this is a pyramid cut at 30 degrees, and this one is cut at 45 degrees. So it's less steep of a cut. Both will work. It's just kind of what you want. This is what the setup looks like at 30 degrees. So as you can see, I have to pull my miter gauge out, and I need a longer piece of stock in order to line up with the cut mark. Whereas with the 45-degree angle, I would need a shorter piece of stock, and my miter gauge will be farther onto the table, which helps with the stability, especially at the first part of the cut. But like I said, I'm going to do it at 30 degrees. So the next step is to mark the center of your workpiece, in my case a 2x2, to indicate where to cut, and then make the cut. So take your workpiece, rotate to the cut side, mark your center again, and make the next cut. Now for the last two cuts, you'll be able to use the end or the developing pointy part of the pyramid as a visual reference for your cut, and you won't need to mark it again. And now we'll just set the miter gauge back to 90 degrees, and we'll cut the pyramid off the end. And there we have it. Nice little pyramid. Turned out really good. Okay, so the second method on the bandsaw for cutting out pyramids is to cut it out freehand. So here's what you do. You just mark out the shape of the pyramid on the side of the stock. You don't necessarily have to measure any angles here if you don't want. You can just mark the center point up here and then draw your base down here and then connect the lines and you'll have the shape. So you can just pick whichever one you want. But when you go to cut, just cut the two sides, then you'll rotate it and mark the same shape again and cut those two sides. And then make the cross cut and you will have your pyramid. Now, this takes a steady hand, and sometimes I have one, sometimes I don't. But if you're just looking for a painter's pyramid that's functional, it's gonna work out great. To cut out the pyramid using a jigsaw, mark the workpiece like I did for the freehand cut on the bandsaw. Okay, it's not pretty, but it is functional. Just need more practice. My favorite methods were the tetrahedron on the table saw, the pyramid on the compound miter saw, and the miter gauge method on the bandsaw. Now, having said that, I think all of these methods produce functional, usable painter's pyramids. If you're interested in any of the tools I use in this video, I put links down below. If you have enjoyed this video, I encourage you to subscribe and watch this next one. It's really good. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.